Good morning, super users of Excel. This is Vinod starting a new program today, and this program will be there for the next 5 weeks. I call this program as Excel Super User Program, and this will be a part of my Excel User Series 6.0 video in my YouTube channel. You can download and you can start watching these videos completely. And this particular video is going to be for 60 minutes. On each and every day I'm going to cover a set of topics. In our today's topic we are talking about Excel anatomy, or I'll term the first session of mine will always be as Excel or anatomy of Excel. If you are brand new to Excel, don't worry about it. So we're going to learn anything and everything from scratch. Let's see what Excel anatomy is all about. So before that, I would like to give you an idea about what is Excel is all about. So what do you call Excel as? Whenever I work with Excel, again, Excel is a 2 grid of data. So probably I will term an Excel in multiple dimensions. So when I pick up an Excel sheet here, this is one of the new Excel sheet that I've added in here. When I select an Excel sheet from the alphabetical order, I will term that as column. If I'm about to pick up that from numerical data, then I will term that as a row. If I want to see the permutation combination of both of this, and then the intersecting point will be termed as a cell. Again, I started with a simple logic called a worksheet, where you will see all the cells will be there. So you will have the rows, the columns, and the cell will be there, and you can add as many sheets as you want. Normally I will say unlimited sheets are available in Excel when we are adding it. Again, I will not try the entire data sets here for see how many sheets can be added. So let's jump into the number of rows and columns available. Again, I'll pick up the latest versions alone. Probably it starts with versions from 2010. So there won't be a bigger change when we are working in these versions. You can just see the typicality of the data sets here. Again, the advantage of using these versions will vary accordingly, and when we are working on a version wise, there is a parallel version which ran with 2013 version until now. I'm using one of those versions which is called Office 365. I don't want this Office 365 to come in multiple columns, so I'm going to merge and center this data. When I do that, automatically my data set will be merged. It won't be centered, so I'm going to make it the horizontal and vertical center together. So why did I pick up the versions here? So when I talked about the anatomy of Excel, I talked about what is an Excel is all about. I call that as two-way grid, and then I said a standing line item will be called as column, the sleeping line item will be called as row, the intersecting point of the row and column will be a cell. And then plus we can also see the worksheets that I've just recently added. Let's just jump into the data sets of the rows and columns. Again, the rows and columns will not vary when I'm using the version that I'm showing in here. The number of rows will be 10,48,576 rows, and then the number of columns that I'm going to see is 16,384 columns. Pardon me. So how do I know that this many number of rows and columns are available here? Excuse me, I'm not well. If I want to know the number of rows and columns, I can jump to the last row or I can jump to the last column. So it's up to me whether I want to go for the last row or a last column based on the cursor movement that I'm about to trigger right now. So if I want to go for the last row, I'll be using a keyboard shortcut called Control arrow down. This will take me to the last row here. and I can use the control arrow right to just jump to the last column here. Again, when I do that, my cursor point will navigate to the last so that I may not able to view what I typed on top. And again, if I want to jump back to the existing cell again, so I can just use the control arrow left to come back to the arrow right from the arrow right, and then control arrow up will bring you to the arrow down point. So let me place this and show you how the navigation is going to go forward. So now I jump to the last line by control arrow down. It's going to go to the very last row. The last row is 10,48,576. I want to jump back again. I'm going to give control arrow up. That takes me to the same screen again. I'm going to just move one cursor above. I'll say control arrow right. That will take you to the last column. Again, my column will be numbered as text. You won't see the numbering component comes into play. If you want to change this, you can do that. So I'm going to just jump back to my cell reference again, and I'll jump back to the first row again by pressing control arrow up. That's going to showcase the data that I've seen a while ago. Now, how I can change the column instance? Typically, excuse me excuse me again. How I can convert the column instant into a row. For example, as I mentioned earlier, my rows are numbered and my columns are letter based or alphabetical based. I would like to showcase both of them in a similar pattern. There is one way I can achieve that. That is, I can convert my row and column into numbers. But I cannot do the other way around because the columns dimension cannot be brought into a row dimension. That is, I cannot convert all my 1, 2, 3s into ABCDs in the rows. How do I do that? This is where I'll be using one of the logic called xlsoptions. xlsoptions will allow me to achieve this beautifully. So let's see how I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go back to the xlsoption by going to my file tab, and then I'll go to the last line called options. When I click the options, it populates a box to me, or I call this as a pop-up. Talks about my xlsoptions here. To convert my column terms into a row term, I'm going to go back to my formulas, and then in that I'll see one line here called working with formulas, and I have a first line in here called R1 C1 reference type. So when I place the cursor here, so it's going to talk about how I'm going to interchange the letters into a number. So when I check this box again and when I give an OK, it's going to automatically convert my data into a numerical display here. Again, when you're writing an automation or when you're recording an automation, the system always consider the rows and columns in 1, 2, 3. It won't consider that as a letter and a number. To make sure the data works better, so we will retain it, and then for the cell referential point, I will always retain the data set as the rows and columns. If you closely watch, there is one small box comes to the left top of our data set. We call this as name box. In the name box structure, if you see, when I change the rows and columns here, it says R6 C10. That is, I'm in the row 6 and column 10 here. That's what it denotes. But if I change this back to the originality, then that's going to term the column name by a letter and the row name will still be 6 here. Let's jump back to my file again and remove this particular row references to column references to two different dimensions. Now this won't be termed as C6 R or R6 and C10. Instead it will become J6. This is what we call it as cell references. So an xlsoption will swap the data beautifully for us. But what I want right now is I would like to add one of the logics which we regularly use when we don't want our data to navigate, or when my data navigates, I still wish to see the data that I'm seeing on top of my cell. This is where I'm going to use one of the view tab menu, or I'll call this as a ribbon. So in the view tab, I'll go back to the logic called freeze pane, and then I want to freeze the pane here. So this is what I'm going to do. To do this, we have a keyboard shortcut for a freeze pane here. So freeze pane will freeze a cell for me, or an entire row, or an entire column. Now I just use the keyboard shortcut to expand the cell references so I can see the freeze pane completely. Don't worry about the keyboard shortcuts that I'm using in here. So you will see this in all my video, because I'm recording this with Camtasia Studio here. So I will add all the keyboard shortcuts, or all the keyboard shortcuts that I'm about to use will all be there in our video, where we can see what kind of keyboard shortcut that I use. I sometimes won't specify what keyboard shortcut that I am using in here. I will just showcase that on my user friend, because this is a work hazard that I have here. I always make sure that something comes properly for me. So I'm going to create a keyboard shortcut. The keyboard shortcut is going to be Alt WFF. So that's going to freeze my data set. Again, how do I freeze? How I want to freeze? It is up to me. So if I want to keep the freeze component to go for the entire row, I can select an entire row on a column. It's pretty easy to do so. So I'm going to use a shift spacebar to select the entire row, and a control spacebar will select the entire column. Normally I used to label my data above. I didn't do that in this scenario. The reason why is the moment I do that, I have to make the header into a merged cell, so that sometime it selects the data really oddly. To make sure the data works properly for me, so I used shift enter or shift spacebar, pardon me, and a control spacebar. So each and every one of them selects the data set accordingly. This is going to select the entire row for me. And then this is going to select the entire column too. Excuse me. So this will make my freeze work better. So I want to freeze anything above this row. So I'm going to give a shift spacebar, and I'm going to hit Alt WFF. The moment I do that, you can see that I have two variances that comes into play. So I have a column lock and a row lock, because my cell component comes in here, so I don't need that, because I could have done that in a different way. So let me just do this right now, and then again it's going to create the same issue. So let me just place the cursor and hit Alt WFF, and you can see how the data navigates here. And if you want all these data to come into play, so place the cursor to the last active cell here, and then hit Alt WFF, so that my line item will give you a range for me. So this is the range that I want to see always, and I made sure that range comes in my reference data. So now if I give a control arrow down, control arrow right, I will navigate to anywhere that I want in a cell reference, but still I can literally see what are the data that I have typed so far, and I can see them all in my view irrespective where my cursor point navigates. So this is one of the part of anatomy. Again, I would like to release the keyboard shortcut, or I'm releasing the freeze cell here. Let's make the anatomy even more interesting. This is where I am about to save our Excel file for the first time, but I did that way before because I don't want to miss whatever I'm typing in here, and I am also keeping the autosave option above, because I already mentioned where this file has to be saved. So I no longer want to worry about it. Every time the system takes it to automatic save function above, it's going to save it where I wanted it to be, because this is one of the general usage front difficulty many people will face here, because they don't know where their data actually lies. So I made sure that this particular data sets are saved in a specific location, so that I really don't want to worry about it whether it is auto saving it anywhere else. I'm not going to worry about it. It's going to work for me properly. The next important part that we will always learn is how to save an Excel file. To save an Excel file, I will normally use a logic called Control S. That's the keyboard shortcut that I use generally. But again, if I am about to save this Excel file in multi-dimensional data set, then I preferably use another keyboard shortcut called either Alt F2, or I will use an F12 functionality to do that. We term this as save as. Again, you can see the differences when we come back to our file option. You can see that then the file will be saying this. Again, I'm saving my Excel file directly in a OneDrive, so you don't see this as a file we have save and save as, because I'm saving this either as a copy or as an Adobe PDF here. So I'm directly saving them in an online location or a OneDrive here. So if you're doing this in your local system, you will see save and save as button automatically here. So I'm not doing that at the moment, so the keyboard shortcut will not show. So when I go back to my list, you can see that, and I'm going to just save this button. So when I give a Control S, it's going to update my current cell. But if I want to save this Excel, now my Excel file shows with an extension called Xlsx above. This is the default functionality that we always have here. Again, if you want to just make sure that you want to save an Excel file in a specific format, you can set them up by default in your options, or else you can save them manually. Let's see how I'll set this as a default option. By default, this will be the first option to pick it up, but again, you can change whatever you want to change in here. So I'm going to go back to my file. I'll go back to the options again. This time around, I'm going to pick up the save button, and here you can see the different set of file format that we can save here. I generally use 4 or 5 options here, not more than that. I use the first 4 options: xlsx, xlsm, xlsb, xls, and then I will use text tab delimited CSV, that is called comma separated value files. But I'm going to use this Excel file, and my people or my team uses Excel in multiple application. They use an open office, they use a Google Sheet, and they use the spreadsheet in MacBook also. Then I have a different way to absorb it, or I will save an Excel file in a specific format so that the respective application can open it without any fuss. Normally in a Google Sheet we will not have a problem. We can upload any sheet and then open that in the Google Sheet. That's going to work for you. So normally when I work on this, I will work on 4 or 5 dimensions generally. So these are the 4. Let's see what these dimensions are. So when I go back to the point, I'll call this as extension of Excel. So normal extension that I will use Xlsx. By default, we all save Excel file in this format, xlsm. Wherever we have a macro that we are recorded, or the macro we wrote, or the macro we enhanced for a sheet, you can save an Excel file in xlsm so that your macro will be retained, plus whatever the result that you got out of a macro will all be available for you. You can save them in xlsb. Again, xlsb is a very rarely used scenario unless otherwise you are creating it from the word go. Please do not convert an xlsb in between in a file. What does an xlsb function will do for us? When I go for an xlsb functionality will compress your data and save a little time. Probably when we are working in a large data set in Excel, you'll always have a situation like you will see a ring running around, a process ring runs in an Excel. That process ring runs because we manage Excel in a very bad way. Many people will say that I don't use a larger formula, or my formula goes, or my Excel sheet takes eternity to open it. So this happens just because of one good reason, because our data is not continuous. So if you are an Excel user, or you are a seasoned Excel user, or you are a brand new Excel user, please retain the data as close. Now what I am doing right now is a very pathetic way of maintaining Excel. Normally we start Excel from A1. That is the best way of doing it. But again, for the aestheticness and the way in which I work, I don't start from the very first cell on the left top. That's my way of working, so I always do this. But again, when I'm dealing with a larger data, I preferably start from A1 cell references. By that way, my data will not have a lot of blank spaces, so the processing point will not be way too much when we are working in Excel. Very rarely we use this extension called Xlsx. If you are using any version below 2003, probably you can use that. So let me just add a few more dimension for us. The most lovable version for me is 2003, and then this is where we will be using one of the option here. Again, the rows and columns will be very different here. It is not anymore the rows and columns that we are using in other versions. If you're using 2003 version, it's 65 and then 256. This is the number of rows and columns you will see in a data set here. Again, I would like to check this once because I'm using it for a very long time. Let me just check whether this is 65,536. 256 column is where I'm sure about it, but I'm not sure about the number of rows here. So let me check once for me. To do that, I'm going to save this Excel file. Again, I've already saved this Excel file once called first workbook Xlsx. I would like to save them in the same pattern, but again, I'm going to change the extension to this extension. So press an F12 button. That's what's going to give you the save location where I have my file already. So you can see that I'm using the Excel snippet folder here, and I'm using Excel user series 6.0. I'm going to change this. I'm going to click this drop down below and then select the respective file version, and then the XLS stands for XL97 and 2003 workbook, and then I'm going to just save this button. So the moment I save it, I have a copy of it. Normally when I downgrade an Excel from the latest version, so you used to get this pop-up button. We call this as Microsoft Excel compatibility check. The number of rows and columns is going to be drastically reduced here. At the moment I didn't use a lot of rows and columns, so I don't have any issues as such. And if there is any weird option comes into play, that's going to really make my life a little more easier. And then there is a lot of features which was enabled when I saved this Excel file a while ago, and when I am saving right now will vary, because when I move the cursor point or when I move my Excel from Xlsx to XLS, then I lose certain basic functionality that I have in Excel 2010 version. One or two of them that I'm gonna retain, or I'm gonna tell you here. Slicers will not work for you in XLS, whether you are using in 2007 version or 3 version. Slicer is not a part of our Excel. Only in 2010 version we had slicer, so slicer will not be enabled. It will be disabled automatically. So I'm going to just check the number of rows and columns here. I'm not going to use this anyway, so I'm going to just say continue this, and then I'm going to close this data once. I want to reopen it, because when I do that, that way we work with our data better. So I'm going to go back to our file where our file lies. So let me just go back. This is not a place where our file lies actually. I'm going back to the data, and then I'm opening this file. So now we can see the differences when we are working on the icon. The icon itself different here. So let me just make them a little bigger. The icon will be very different here. So this is, again, I always retain the extension of an Excel here, because I may be using Excel for more than 2.5 decades right now. So I touched 25th year on my stint of Excel using since 1999 or more than that. I can go way back, but again I started using it completely, or I'm using it a lot after 2002. So I won't call this as 25th year as such, as a complete user, but as from a beginner, this is the best point of doing it. If you don't see the extensions here, don't worry about it, because I'm using Windows 10 as my operating system. When you do that, you will see, once you open a folder and see a larger view, sometimes you will only see the name of the file. Sometime like this, you will see only the name of the file. This you cannot identify whether it is a older version or new version. Even somebody with my exposure towards Excel spontaneously may not able to recognize which one is the older version, which one is the newer version. The older version will be the left hand one, and the newer version will be the right hand one, and the older version will be larger in size, because when I go back without this name, when I go back to the detail size, my older version will be larger here in size, the newer version will be more lighter here. So I can read that by that way because I'm using Excel that extensively, so I can understand the Excel better. I don't take chances when I do deal with such scenarios. I always make sure that when I go back to the view tab, I'll maintain the name extension after my Excel file. By that way, I literally know what is the Excel version that I'm working in here, or what is the Excel extension that I'm working here. I don't want to talk about the version here because even the version will be a little different when we are working on it. So I'm going to double click this. So the entire Excel file will be there available. But there is one catch: when I downgrade my Excel, probably there are a few features would have been gone out of my Excel. So normally I added the freeze pane, and I think that I've removed it also, so the freeze pane might not be there. But if I had a freeze pane earlier and then when I downgraded my Excel file, my freeze pane may go out of my equation. Let me just see whether this is working for me still. Earlier when I used to work when I add a slicer or when I add a freeze pane to my latest version, when I downgrade the Excel to the lowest version or the version which I wish to keep it. So I'm going to place the cursor here. I'll just say Alt WFF. So now my freeze is on, so I can just check out whether my freeze is on or not. Yes, my freeze is on, and I'm going to just save this Excel file. So that's going to update my Excel file, and then it is saying that it is saving on top. And then I'm going to just downgrade this to my older version. So now my file is saved. I'm going to give an F12 and then convert this into XLS. When I save it, it is going to replace the old Excel file with a new one. That's going to pop up a window to me. Yes, I already have the file. I would like to replace it. So then it's going to pop up the window because I'm redoing the entire process again. Continue this data, and I'm closing this file, the one which is Xlsx. I'm opening the XLS file here. Normally when I downgrade the file, there are few features will disappear here automatically. So now you won't see the freeze. When I go down to my data set, the freeze is gone. But the good part is, I think that the number that I typed is subconsciously recorded in my mind, I believe. So I gave the right number here. So let me just add the freeze again here. So again, the freeze was there, but it was not working. So when I had to hit the freeze once, it removed the freeze that I had. When I have refreezed it again. So now when I go back to the last line, you can see 65,536 rows, 256 columns, because I know that number of columns is 256. Again, the numbers are reduced. Again, you know that how to replace this. So I'll go back to my file, and then I'll go back to my options, formula, check the R1 C1 button and give an OK. The number changes here. Now we can see 65,536 rows, 255 columns are available in my data set automatically here. Let me bring back the alphabets again. So let me just jump back to my options. I'm using not a keyboard shortcut here. I'm navigating via a mouse option so that you know where this option lies in our data set. Again, I don't no longer require the freeze, so I'm removing the freeze out of the equation here. So now you know how to swap the data and what are the different extensions that we have here. I always use the other extensions also here, which is PDF. If I'm keeping the data set in one single page setups properly, then I use a PDF nicely here, and then I'll use CSV file and then TXT file. And then I generally use, whenever we started using Excel, we never had a proper version. Now we are having a paid version here with us. When we started our career, we used a lot of pirated versions. Again, I'm not ashamed to say so because we cannot afford that much of payment that earlier did. And again, we are affording a lot more money right for Microsoft. Again, as I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, I no longer want to worry about how the data works, and then I make sure that the data set goes really well. And then we use XPS formula. This is one of the functions that we always save. So I'm going to just go back to file, and the moment I change this to some other dimension, so let me just pick up the second dimension of Excel, that is xlsm, which will take you to the macro enabled workbook. I'm going to give an F12 again. I'm going to convert this into xlsb. I'm converting this into a PDF. If you want to see how the PDF is going to look like, now this will become two different pages for me. So let me just go back to the PDF here, and then I will make sure the dataset comes completely here. So when I select a PDF here at the bottom of my screen, you will see that whether you want to open it or not. Normally, if you want to open this file, you can just check this box, and if you want to run this as standard or a minimized size of the dataset, then you can pick up the options accordingly. I'm going to keep it standardization, and I give an OK. That's going to just replace the file. I already have the file, and then you can see a PDF file opens automatically for me here. Again, I'm keeping the PDF as a web browser edition, so you will see this file. Again, this is going to be a two different page because my page is broken in the H column or the J column here. So if I would have kept this file to the left, probably all this data would have come in one single screen. Let me just rephrase it. So let me just delete this additional cells here. Again, still I'll be in a spot of bother here, I believe. So let me just make sure that the entire screen comes in one simple point. So I'll go back to my data here. So let me go back to my page layout, and then I'll reduce this to maybe, yeah, I made it as 95% in scaling. Now if I bring this data set, or if I convert this into PDF, it's all going to be in one single page. F12, and then convert this into PDF, and when I give an OK, that's going to replace the value for me. And okay, I think that I've already kept this file open. Okay, sorry about that. Let me just take some time for me to showcase the data. Yes, I have it. Again, I'm keeping all this file. Okay, I think that I'm keeping this file open here, I believe so. Let me just, it's going to take a little longer because I'm directly saving it in a PDF in a OneDrive directly, so the file might not open immediately after a second. Yes, because I have an issue in saving this file. Anyway, that's okay. We will see this output a little later. And I'm going to save this file in XPS format. So let me just make this as an XPS format. Do I have it? Yes, I have it. This doesn't need a, okay, let me just open this because this will open directly, I believe so. So this is an XPS format that we have here. Typically it will be like a file, and then when I open it, it doesn't need any application to open it. It has its own application to open it. It typically shows like a PDF viewer, but it is not a PDF, it is an XPS edition. Not every system will have it. Again, I think this, I have it in my laptop too. I'm using Windows 10 version. When we are starting tomorrow, I will start the session in my laptop, so that the laptop version will be a little different. The icons will be different, and there will be subtle variant when we are working on this data. Let's see what are those do. So now the moment of truth comes into play. So I started with my first page here, and then I created a new sheet here. The moment when I started saving these Excel files in CSV or text, whatever the active sheet, only that will be retained here. So I'm going to go back to the F12 functionality again, and then change this to CSV. So when I go for CSV, the CSV file will have 4 different formats here. So when I go for CSV, I have a Google Sheet edition that is called UTF-8. Then I have a comma delimited format, which is belong to Microsoft Excel, or Microsoft rather, Macintosh and MS-DOS. You can pick up any one of the format here. I'm going to use the second option here called comma delimited. The moment I give a save here, this Excel sheet name will become first workbook automatically, and I will only see one workbook here. So the multiple workbook will not come into play. You can see that there is an error message pops up here. So when I give an OK, that's going to change the Excel sheet here, and then when I save this file, my first file will go for a task. Even I open this in a CSV file, you will only see this file available for me. Let me just close and reopen it again. When I go back to my data again, and you see all the format that I have here, and I'm going to open the CSV format. You no longer see the first sheet of my Excel anymore. You will see only the first book that is converted, and this will happen even if I open a text file. Now you can see the first page that I've done earlier is gone. All my formatting is going for a toss, and my merge cell, everything will go for a toss. I don't see a merge cell anymore in my left hand side here, and then whatever I've adjusted, whatever I saw that as a detailed view will all go off here, because this is not an Excel file, this is a text file format. I'm opening it in Excel here for us. Let me jump back to my data again. This time around I'm going to go back to my Xlsx again, and whatever file format that I kept earlier, or whatever the extension, whatever the expansion that I did to a specific column will all be retained. All my merge centers, horizontal center, vertical center, and even my freeze pane is still intact here. Again, whatever update that I did in the extensions of the other dimensions is gone out. That is not a part of my Xlsx, that's a part of my Excel file here. So when I open the Excel file, you can see them all here. And again, even in this file I don't see the extension part of it. So let me jump back to my CSV file itself. That's the place where I have every aspects that I've built so far. Probably I should have saved it in Xlsx once, and then I should have done that in the PDF also. So let me just save this one more time in the Xlsx functionality. By that way I'll be having the latest version in Xlsx, because the other functions I'm using at the moment for our convenience here, and I'm showing the various file format that I can use in a data set here. And the last and the final option that I wish to save in our Excel is called text file. Again it is opening the Excel file for me. So let me just select this margin center, horizontal and vertical centers that I'm adding it here. Now I'm gonna fill it. Excuse me. Okay, my F12 is not really working for me. Yeah, it's taking a little longer than normal. Then I go back to the text file here. Again, when I go for text, I have 3 variants here: tab delimited, H&TOS, and MS-DOS. I'm going to use the tab delimiter for our data conversion here. And then now I have another file in the text or txt function too. So I have literally around 7 different dimensions here. Let me just make them a little smaller. So I made actually 8, 4 in Excel and 4 in other dimensions here that I have with me. So these are the different varieties of Excel extracts generally we do, whether we import it or whether we export it an Excel into some other dimension. We always do this as our list here. Again, I'm going to just expand these dimensions. So I'm selecting this, expanding it according to the data freeze that I have here. Again, these are the logics that we talked about. Excel rows and columns. Anything that happens within an Excel sheet is explained detailedly here. The next logic that we will see is called ribbons. When I go for ribbons, ribbons will have tabs, and in the tabs we will have a lot of groups, buttons and drop downs, and that's what we call it as commands. So whatever I did right now, the freeze pane is one of the command. So when I go for this dimension is called ribbons here. Again, each and every ribbon has a separate tab here. Again, I'm only opening those are regularly visible for all of us. I'm not using anything which is not out of our equation, but when I activate or when I use additional dimensions here, so I've removed a lot of my add-ins that I've added here. So you can see at the bottom I have a data stream, Enquire, Acrobat, QuickBooks and SAP Analytics here. So when I add this, you see a lot more menus, or I call this as tabs here. So I'm going to get rid of those which I'm not going to get it on a regular basis. Not all of them will have these additions, so I have just added those dimensions here. When I go for every tab, so when I go to home tab will have clipart, font, alignment, number, style, cell editing. Likewise, every tab or every menu will have multiple sub menus here. I term it as sub menus, but again you can call that as whatever you feel it is better for you. I call this as groups rather. You can even term that as groups. And I have a table here, illustration, control, charts, spark lines, filter, link, comment, text, symbol. And then in the draw we have few, in page layout we have few, formulas we have few, data we have few, review, view, and so on and so forth. So let's jump down to each and every data sets very clearly so that we know what these dimensions are used for. So before I go into the tabs detailedly, so we will talk about few more dimension is called QAT. We call this as Quick Access Toolbar. Normally Quick Access Toolbar will have informations like few of them are activated here, and sometimes this appears above my menu, sometimes it appears below my menu. So wherever you feel, if you have a lot of information or a lot of Quick Access Toolbar functionality to be used, instead of going into the menu of each screen and get it into your worksheet, you can keep them as Quick Access Toolbar. Again, this is mostly used by a mouse user. I preferably keep the keyboard and mouse both intact when I'm working on it, but again I will preferably keep both of them. Many people will say keyboard shortcut is the best way of doing it. I'm not showcasing my talent to anybody, nor I'm going to showcase that I know everything in Excel. I do something very fast. I don't want to do any of those dimensions in this particular training, so I maintain both these dimensions in a much more balancing act, so that makes my life a little more easier for all of us. Those who love to use mouse, you can use them. Again, when you feel that the productivity is becoming a little lesser, automatically you start learning all the keyboard shortcut that's required. Whatever keyboard shortcut that you are using regularly, it will be your strength, and I leave that option to you. So you pick up what you want to do with it, whether you want to maintain a keyboard shortcut in all your workouts or you use both the keyboards and mouse simultaneously. I will leave it to you. The next logic that we are about to talk about is how a data is defined. Normally when we are working with Excel comes out with two different dimensions. So when I started teaching Excel, I'll always say Excel is used for data mining and data manipulation. For this we use but today Excel is used very differently. We no longer use data for only Excel for data mining and data manipulation. We use Excel for data analytics nowadays. Without Excel, data analytics basics is not started. So if you go to any data science class, the first class that you will learn will be Excel. Without Excel, nothing happens here. Again, I'm understanding Excel a little better. So to understand data analytics or Excel better, I need to understand how the data are used in Excel specifically, or in a particular pattern. So I'm going to go for data type. So this is what the data sets will happen, or this is how the data will work for you. So whenever I type something in a text, you can see that the data set comes to the left side, or I'll call this as aligned left. By default, all my text will be aligning left to my data set. But if I add the data to the numbering format, then the data will be aligned automatically to the right. So when I type a number, a decimal number, or a date, everything will automatically align towards right. So this will literally tell you the data type, what sort of a data that I am dealing with. And whenever we go for the data sets, we will always have boolean, that is a true or a false. Whenever I type a true or false, you can see that I didn't do anything very big here. I type true, the boolean text automatically become automatic capital, and it is not aligned to the left nor it aligned to the right, it is aligned to the center. And then it is not only just aligning to the center, but also it is becoming auto caps. Again, all my errors will come into play very differently. So when I normally pick up a formula with a weird output, so you can see an error comes in place here. I multiplied a cell from a text and I multiplied with a number here, so I got a hashtag value error with exclamatory mark, and this is the formula that I used inside. So my formula text will tell you where the cell are referred here, and then what is the result out of it. Again, even an error in Excel will be aligned to the center. That is how the data part works for me. Whenever I use Excel, I always call Excel is used for data mining and data manipulation, but nowadays I'm using data for data analytics here. Again, the next logic that we need to learn when we are working in Excel is called the number formatting. Again, number formatting will be very useful when we are working in Excel. So because in Excel, number formatting by my Guruji is called as a facet, and he always says that to me, that when you find out a number can be used in any which and way that you want. And if you want to talk more about numbers, again, you will go back to your home tab. In the home tab, in the number grouping or in a number sub menu, you can see that a number formatting found in the home tab generally. And then when a number format displays a number in a specific pattern or in a specific dimension without changing the base of the number, it will have its own basics here. So now I typed a number with a decimal here, and if I want maybe a 2 decimal portion to be added to my data, I can do that with ease. Again, this will only change the number format visually, but it is not going to change the background or the base value of my numbers here. So when I give a comma here, you can see my data sets have changed in the look of the data set, but when you go back to the base, in the bottom of the base, you won't see that there is a 0 is added here. That's what a number formatting does for you. A formula does not see a number format. Formula acts as the base value. So when I multiply this value in here, the formula does not see 12.50 or 12.50. It will see 12.5. So that's the difference between those. This is what a formula will see, not the one which I have or I wish to see as an output here. That's the number format here. So you can always round the value here. Again, if you want to make sure the data set looks a little better, you can use a formula to round the underlining number. So the underlining number will become an actual number here. So you don't have two different dimensions. When I edit this, it's different. When I don't edit this, this is different. So I want to retain both the dimensions as similar, then I will use a formula to do that for me. I don't want the methodology that I've used a while ago, so I'm using Control Z twice so that it brings the data again. So I'm going to just say equals round, then select the data here. I'll give a comma and then I'll say 2 and close the bracket and give an enter. That's going to just change the dimension completely here. So my data not only displays as 12.5 here, but my base value and the formula value both are similar here. And when I add a formula here, you can see the formula text shows what did I do with data sets here. And whenever I choose a number and then when I convert this into a general, that's gonna remove all my formatting that I have here. So for example, if I added a function, so now it has become an accounting number. When I change this to general number, that's going to erase the data set for me completely out of the equation here. So if you want to bring back to the originality of a data, we always convert the ranges or cell references into a general format here. So that is how we work with our data. So this is our anatomy of Excel. So today I will go to one more dimension, which is called a cursor point. So cursor point will be our last leg of our data, so where we will learn how a cursor point will look like. So when I go back to a new sheet and then when I go to this particular kind of cursor, this cursor is called selection cursor. So this allows you to select a range. This is what a selection cursor is all about. Again, the moment I select the cursor, so when I go and select the cursor and or when I type a number here and then when I place the cursor here, and then you can see that when I move the cursor from the center to the bottom or top or left or right, my cursor point changes. We call this as move cursor. Again, this will be a helpful cursor point which allows you to use the next domain logic that we're going to learn called autofill option. So for that we need to use two different dimensions. The next logic that I'm going to realize or I'm going to build right now will be, I'll make this as big as possible so that I can just show you the differences that I'm going to bring in here. So this is a normal cursor or selection cursor. This is a move cursor. And when I bring the cursor to the right hand side bottom, you can see a small point here. This point is called fill handle. And then when I move the cursor to the fill handle point, my cursor point changes. We call this as crosshair, or my Guruji used to say this as angry rabbit cursor. So again, he names it a lot of funny name to it. I call this as autofill handler. So when I drag down, so that's going to fill all my numbers to multiple cells here. If I have a formula, that's going to showcase the data a little differently here. Again, these are the logic that we will deal with cursor points. And again, how do you add a formula into a cell? So how do you put a formula in a cell? Using a keyboard. So when I normally type and enter, the cursor will move downwards. When I type Control Enter, the cursor will be retained. There it is. When I want to type a tab, my cursor point moves to the right. And when I want to type a Shift Enter, so that's going to jump the cursor point one step ahead. Or if I'm selecting a range and then I want to jump back to the first line item, I can do that with this. For example, when I'm typing 10, or when I select this and then when I give a Shift Enter, my cursor point jumps one step upward. You can see that my cursor point is navigating one by one. Normally I'll use this in a formula so that my cursor point jumps to the first cell where my data set lies here. So let me just add some numbers here and show you how this is going to work for me. So now I'm going to come down to the point and I'm selecting this data. Normally when I give an enter, that's going to give you an answer. I'm selecting it, and if I'm putting it in a formula, I'll just say simple formula, and you can see the cursor point moves downward because I gave an enter. But if I want to raise or I want to see this formula better, so for example I'm just adding these two numbers and I'm dragging it a little longer than normal. So now I just added too much. Let me put it in 300 here. So now I want to write a formula here. When I normally hit a formula here, equals sum, and then I'll give a tab, move the cursor to the left, shift control arrow down. Now you no longer see the formula here, but again I can see the formula above. When I give an enter, it won't showcase the formula for me. But if I want to see the result and the formula simultaneously, I can do it in two different ways. I will either type the sum formula completely. Before I use a shift enter, I'll give control backspace. That's going to jump back to the cell references where I place my formula. When I give an enter, that's going to populate my answer automatically. And if I don't want to see this like this, so I'm going to just say equals sum, and then I'll give a shift enter. That's going to jump and showcase the answer for me, and then my cursor point jumps one step ahead. So whatever the selected range that I have here, my cursor moves one step upward to the cell when I use shift enter here. So this is how a keyboard can be used, and when I use an enter, downwards. When I use control enter, retains the same portion. Tab, right side. If it's a selection, then it goes one step upwards. So this is how a formula can be initiated or used using a keyboard here. With this, I will come to the conclusion of the day 1 class on the anatomy of Excel and how we can use Excel better. When we come back tomorrow, we will talk about Excel golden rules. The golden rules will allow you to learn more about how to input a formula, how to work with the formulas and so on. And we will talk about formatting again a little bit, and then we'll start seeing how to use a formula and what is a cell reference, what are the different varieties of cell reference that we have here, how we can edit a formula, how we can make the formula in a different dimension altogether. We will see all of them as we go forward. This is Vinod signing out on day 1 on our Excel super user program, or in my Excel YouTube channel. I'll call this as Excel user series 6.0. Thank you so much, guys. If you want to join the live session, I will be adding the link in the YouTube channel for us. You can join the session and you can enjoy a live session also. Again, if you are planning for questions in between, we will try to have that as the fag end of a session. So we will extend it after the recording is complete, and then we will have all our question sessions later. On the first day, I just added it. Many of them, if they missed to join my day 1 video, no problem. You have this in our YouTube channel. Don't worry about it. I'll be adding all the links, all our class files, video extensions, all the Excel files that you want to see here. You can see them all in my YouTube channel description below. Again, if you are learning a referential video, I'll be connecting as many videos as possible for me in my iCards or in the description. And in this particular session, whatever we are working on it, or if I'm jumping to a timestamps in this list, I will record this, I'll convert this video, and then I will write this timestamps also. Probably the video updation might be a little later than normal. Probably in a day I will try to add it. If not, probably in a day or two of the recording has happened, the next day or the subsequent day, you'll get the entire video with the descriptions available for us. Thank you so much, guys. Please do share this link to all the fellow students here, and if you guys are new to Excel, This is the best way of learning Excel, and this Excel learning will make you a superstar sooner or later. So this is going to be a super user program on Excel. Have a great day ahead, guys. See you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you so much. This is Vinod.